It's a pleasure to have you all here today. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. Today we are going to have a lecture given by Teresa, which is called Were the Previous Generations Better? So yeah, we're going to find that out, or at least have an idea about that at the end of the lecture today. Before that, I'm going to invite Marco Diniz, who is going to read give us the initial prayer and also do the initial reading. Thank you very much.
I'm going to read the message from the book Happy Life by Divaldo Pereira Franco from the Joana de Angelis, the Spirit. Never lose hope. Whatever may happen, keep believing. If everything is against you and failure treats you with despair, even then, expect divine assistance. Only what is best for us happens. The law of God is the law of love. And love can do everything and does do everything. When you think that help will not arrive in time, if you continue hoping, you will happily discover that it reached you minutes before the disaster. The person who despairs has already lost part of the battle he was going to fight and goes forward with the disadvantage. I'm going to ask everybody to close their eyes and thank our Father, God, the Almighty, to allow us to be here today with health, and ask Him to open our ears, our eyes, our hearts, and mainly our spirit to receive the message and the lesson that our sister Teresa is going to deliver today. And ask the protector spirits of this house to help her to deliver that. Thank you, and so be it.
Thank you, Marco. All right, good morning, everyone. It's nice to have you all here today. So, as Denise has said, the lecture today is actually a question. Were the previous generations better? Who hasn't here heard from your parents, your grandparents, like, this new generation is lost. My time was much better. This didn't exist. Look at those kids. And who of us, like I am old enough now that I can look at least 3 generations after me and say, look at those generations. They didn't exist in my generation. My generation was much better, right? I think a lot of us heard this, or maybe even when we already said about the younger generations after us, right? And in fact, there's someone very famous who quoted this. Children, they have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders and love chatter in place of exercise. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents and tyrannize their teachers. Children are now tyrants. This could be easily a teacher or a parent or grandparents talking about their kids these days, right? Easily. We're going to talk about a little bit later who actually said this, okay? Because that's the impression that we have. That always that my generation was better than the generation that's coming after. So if we really believe that my generation is better than the ones coming after me, but my parents think the same. They think that their generation is better. Like, oh, my time didn't exist. It was much better. And my grandparents said the same thing about their generation. So to believe that each generation before was better is to believe that each generation coming after is worse and worse and worse. So instead of progressing, we are regressing. Okay. But if that's true, we have to go to the Spirit's book. So in Spirit's book, part 3, chapter 8, talks about the law of progress. And I said, a law. which means you cannot change it. It's a law. Like in physics, right? Can I go against, do a protest against the law of gravity? Well, I can. Am I going to change the law? Absolutely not. Every time I drop my cell phone, it is going to fall and hopefully not break, but it's going to fall because I cannot change laws of gravity. It's there. It's part of nature, cannot be changed. It's the same about the law of progress. Okay, we cannot change it. So what the spirits bring to us through Kardec is that when God created us as an intelligent spirit, he created us simple and ignorant. So we pretty much have an empty, blank hard drive full of potential and capacity to develop. Okay, but we are simple and ignorant, like the caveman. That's how we're created. That's how we started there. We pretty much live it by instinct, with the capacity to intelligence to develop intellectually and morally, but we pretty much living by instinct like animals, right? But the plan from God, when he created us, he created this law, which was the law of progress, and you're supposed to progress intellectually and morally. And you cannot stop that. It's a law. Oh, but I don't want to. Well, it's too bad, because it is a law, and we all have to progress, right? And of course, in God's plans, the idea is that we're going to progress with more or less with both at the same time, right? And when we look at our society, it's not quite what happened, right? We deviated a tiny bit from God's plan of both develops, like moral and intellectual. Intellectually, very good at it. Like morally, we're trying to catch up, okay? So in this chapter in the Spirit's book, the first thing that the Spirits bring to us is the definition, is the separation between the state of nature and the natural law. So state of the nature is the state of nature. Nature is around us, like the animals, the flowers, the plants, the fauna and flora, how they behave, how the animals, they live too, but just by instinct, they live, they help each other. And, but they pretty much, what they live for survival, right? They are born, they grow up, they know how to learn how to feed them by instinct, then they reproduce, their kids come, and then eventually die. And that's how nature just renews itself, right? But there's no evolution in the birds. Like all of a sudden you don't have a bird going to university or a dog, getting a diploma. Like they just live in the state of nature, right? But us, we are governed by the laws, okay, by the natural law. And the natural law is nothing more than less that the laws, the divine laws, the laws that God gave to us to guide us as a human beings, the beings or the spirits, the intelligent spirits that are created to evolve morally and intellectually. Okay? So one of the questions that Kardec does to the spirits is, could a humankind regress to the state of nature? So basically, can we eventually regress so much that we're going to become the caveman again? And the answer is very simple. It's no, we can't. Okay. It says humankind must progress without ceasing and cannot return to the state of infancy. So it would be the same thing as he's an adult, asking, but can I go back to be a child? Can I? No, you can't, right? You already grew up. I cannot shrink. I cannot turn you into a child anymore. So the same way they cannot do that physically, when we're here in this incarnation, we all love to go back to be children. Like, let's be honest. Much easier, less responsibility, didn't need to pay bills, but we can't. Because we already evolved. We're now adults, and we need to be. Some of us may behave like a child, and all of us once in a while behave like a child, but we cannot go back to become a child. So same thing as the spirit. Whatever we have acquired intellectually and morally, it is acquired. We cannot all of a sudden erase the hard drive and say, I'm gonna go back and just live like this. I can't choose to go be living like a caveman, but what I brought inside of me is not going to be erased just because I chose the lifestyle, right? Whatever we acquire, it is acquired. It cannot be taken away from us, okay? So he says, humankind must progress without ceasing. It cannot return to the state of infancy. It progresses because God has willed it. Believe that it could not progress, believing that it could regress back to its primitive condition would be denying the law of progress. So it's the same thing. I'm trying to deny the law of gravity. No, it doesn't exist. Things are falling. I don't know why, but but it's not the law of gravity. We cannot deny the law of progress. We are all here to progress. We are here to get better. Like it or not, it is going to happen, okay? Which in some ways is good news, because we're all here getting better. Yeah, we can be stationary sometimes, but we all here get better. And we're never going to lose anything that we have acquired already. Any of the relationships that we have, the ties of love that we have for all of the spirits that we have been connecting so many reincarnations, it is there, and we're never going to be lost, right? And the reason we progress is exactly because of this natural law. Because some people like to believe, especially the people who scientists, or some people who do not believe so much in the spirituality or on the spiritual side, what they believe is that the reason we now progress morally is because we educated ourselves. Because eventually time we educated ourselves, and then now we kind of, this is the right and wrong. And he says it exactly the opposite. It's because we have this law of progress that's inside of us that drive us to educate ourselves and become better, and not the opposite, right? Because it's in us. It's instinctively in us, this desire to get better, and then as we educate ourselves and become better, we start to say, this hurts. I don't like this. I'm not pro-war anymore. Maybe 500 years ago, I was all pro-war, right? And fighting there in the Crusades, but now I'm not anymore because it hurts now. So I educated myself. Morally, we're growing. So there's a lot of things that we accepted in the past that now we don't accept anymore. They may still, some of them may exist today, but it's not acceptable anymore, which in the past was completely acceptable and normal. Right? And then Kardec starts to do some questions to the spirits that it could be easily done these days. And remember, the Spirits book was written in 1850s. Right, over 150 years ago. But some of those questions, I'm pretty sure if Kardec was writing these books these days, he will ask exactly the same questions. And one of them is how can you explain that in general, the most enlightened cultures are the ones that often most pervert? We can see easily this these days. The most developed countries, those that have most technology, are the ones that most create wars, and that in general, the most perverted, right? And when he says, the answer from the Spirit is complete progress is the goal, but like the individual, so like us, individual person, the society itself, the cultures, only reach it step by step until they have developed the moral sense. They may use their intelligence to do evil. Morality and intelligence are two forces that only achieves balance over time. So he's saying that what happened is there's a difference between intellectual development and moral development. And yes, we may develop a lot with technology and be more powerful because now I have all this technology, and can be any kind of a technology gives you power, right? But if morally we don't evolve, the chances that we're going to get all this technology and all the science that we have and not necessarily used for the good things that they should be used to, right? And you can see this with absolutely any technology these days. Nuclear energy, nuclear power was created, and in many ways is used to give clean energy and power entire cities, but can also be used by atomic bombs that can destroy and cause so much damage in our nature, right? You have the internet, computers. This is amazing technology that we have today, right? Today, some people that could not be here can actually watch over the internet. We have people who watch us on the internet that don't live really far away from Toronto that they can watch it. I work with a nonprofit organization that we use this technology for doctors to do consultations over the internet with some of our patients in Africa. So much good things, access to information. It's an amazing technology, but it also can be used to bullying. It can be used for child pornography. It can be used in so many negative ways. And why? Because morally, we didn't evolve yet, right? Technology, fantastic, but morally we didn't. And that's what it's saying here. It's saying, yes, the problem is that we did really great intellectually, but morally, we didn't. But it is going to have a time. It is going to have a time when morally, and we are very slowly getting there, but it's going to have a time when we have a balance between of them. And when we get at that point, and we know we're going through this period of transition on this planet, right? We're going from this planet of expiation to a planet of regeneration. And then slowly, it's going to hurt so much what we have been doing in nature, what we have been doing to each other, that we're going to say, we're tired of it. And we see this. How many protests we have now these days fighting, right? Fighting against inequality, against so many things, because it's hurting now us. So slowly, we are going to grow morally as well, and we're going to create the balance between the two. But for now, unfortunately, yes, we're going to see this. We're going to see countries that are the most intellectual development not doing great things with that technology, right? But all of us as a society are responsible for it. We are all responsible to say to our governments and say, I don't want that. I don't like that, right? I want to change. And that's what we have been doing more and more often, right? And the fact that we're fighting against those things is already showing a progress in our moral development, because now we are looking at those things like that's normal anymore. And I do not want to accept this as a normal anymore, even though a lot of those things still exist in our society, but we're asking for changes. That's moral progress, right? And nothing's it's not gonna happen over time. That's what we need to understand. It doesn't happen over time. It does. I don't have us walking and wake up when I was like, oh my gosh, all my vices are gone. I'm a pure spirit, amazing. This last night of sleep was the best thing that I needed. Now I'm completely transformed. It doesn't exist. So as a society, it doesn't exist either, right? But we are gonna get there. We are progressing because we cannot stop the progress. And there's actually the next question that Kardec does, says, can humankind stop progress? And the answer is no, but he can slow it, right? Yes, we can slow, but stop, we can't, right? Because of course, in any work, if you have everybody working together to do better, it goes much faster. But if you have half working to go in the right way and half is pushing back, it's going to take a little longer to go, right? But the work's going to be done anyways, because it has to be done. So imagine you have a class with 30 children, and you're teaching there like grade 6 there, right? And you have your 30 students there. And you have the 10 students who are always disturbing the class, who doesn't study for the tests and everything. The other 20 are there being disturbed, they study and they keep going and they keep going. You know what's going to happen at the end of the school year? The 21s are going to get all the knowledge. They're going to keep going. They're going to go to 7th grade. And those 10 who didn't do the test, they're going to have to redo their tests. Yeah, they did slow a little bit the process in the class. They did it because they were disturbing. But they didn't stop the progress to happen, because the class is going to come and the new classmates are going to come and the new kids, like it goes. The school doesn't stop because there's a percentage of the students who are disturbing and saying, unfortunately, nobody here is changing classes on level, because we have those 10 students here stopping. So nobody here moves to the 7th grade, okay? Stopping, nobody progress. It cannot be done. So it can slow down, and we're very good at it. But we cannot stop, because it's a law. We are created to progress. We are created to be better and to do better. Okay. But then Kardec insists, like, okay, I know I cannot stop. And it's actually, that's funny when you read the Spirits book, because you see how insistent Kardec is. And sometimes he even asks the same question in different ways, because he really wants to make sure. And sometimes the Spirits are giving him funny answers. I was just like, didn't we already tell you? So I was like, which part you didn't understand that we told you this? So Kardec keeps asking, says, well, humankind's perversity, it's very great. And that's 150 years ago. We could easily ask this today. It says, humankind's perversity is very great. Doesn't it seem like humans are regressing instead of progressing, at least at the moral point of view? That's actually a fair question from Kardec. Yes, no, I understand we progress, but like morally, like look around, look what's happening here. Isn't at least morally we going down? And the answer to is like, you're mistaken. It says, observe the role closely, and you see that they are advancing because they have a better understanding of what evil is, leading them day by day to reform their abuses. The excesses of evil will make them understand the need for the good and for reforms. And that's very true. The problem is that we look at the picture here right now, and we look at all the negative things that's happening in the world right now. I did a Google yesterday to see how many conflicts, how many wars we have right now. Because right now we're pretty much talking about two, Ukraine and Afghanistan. Even Afghanistan kind of forgot when Ukraine started, right? We have about 27 conflicts happening right now in our history here right now. The longest conflict that we have right now happening is in Myanmar. And that has been for 60 years, the conflicts there killing people. Congo has another conflict, killing thousands of people, right? And then we have Ukraine, we have Afghanistan. For how many decades Israelis and Pakistanis are killing each other in the Gaza Strip? Decades. How many conflicts we have? How many times we turn the TV is like a shooting, this, that, no, it's happening. So, and we have a media who's very good at selling what's negative, at showing you like how dangerous the world is, right? They call this the industry of fear, right? Make you fear how bad the world is. And we're never really good to show how much good there is going on around the world right now, right? But so we look at those pictures and say, oh yeah, this world, like it's awful, this is much worse. Well, didn't we have the Crusades in the in the medieval times in there? We did. We have been in wars for the longest time. We haven't learned yet that war is not a good thing for us. It's not a good thing for anybody. But these days we have a lot of people against it. Now we stand and say we don't want wars anymore. Yeah, they're still there. We're standing against them. But what it's saying here is for us to look at the society closely as a whole. For example, I have a question here. Was the last time someone here took your kids, grandchildren, niece, nephew, your friends' kids, to watch someone being hanged on the public square? Anyone? Hope not. Yeah. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Well, 500 years ago was normal. That's how people, the so criminals, because there's no really a real justice at the time, right? It's just if I didn't like you and I found a way and I knew and I had power, I would get you hanging, and you were hanging in the square, and everybody would watch, including the little children. Yeah, let's go. Let some people being hanged. Yeah, let's watch. It's cool. 5, 4, 3, 2 years old, 7. Watch, like, oh yeah, it's a show. Like, oh yeah, being hanged. It was normal. Absolutely normal. Nobody saw anything wrong. Actually, I think it's wrong even for an adult to watch that, but let's think about children watch. It's normal. It's part of the laws. Do you see this happening today? Even if it happened today, this would be horrifying if it happens today. Horrifying. Okay? And so many other things that happened before, right? That today in society, it doesn't exist anymore. And like I said, if it ever happens, it would be horrifying. It's not seen as a normal anymore. They would shock us, right? Over 200 years ago, we thought was normal, was legal, was normal, and we didn't see any moral issues using our African brothers and sisters as slaves. No, the law allows me. It's totally fine. And we treat them worse than the animals, because I'm pretty sure that the owners of farms didn't treat their cows and their horses the way they treated human beings. Normal. It's totally normal, wasn't it? Do we think that's normal these days? Do we still have racism this day? Big time. Yeah. Did we completely solve the problem? Do we have full equality these days? Far from it. But these days we fight for it. We do not accept slavery anymore. We do not think it's normal. We really fight from it. I love it. Yes, but there is still a lot of racism out there. Yes. Homophobia is still out there. Yes, even though last weekend, I think it was last weekend, we had Pride Weekend. Fantastic. We celebrate, we come together, and it's beautiful. But the problem is, it's solved? Not yet. Do we have a long way to go? Absolutely. Are we much better than we are 100, 200, 300 years ago? Absolutely. As a woman, I can tell you that I prefer to be born on this generation that I was born than on my grandmother's generation, where my grandmother had to suffer all kinds of abuse from my grandfather, and had to put her head down because she was a woman. It was her obligation to put her head down and accept all the abuses that she was receiving from my grandfather. Right? Thank God these days I can speak up and I can walk away and kind of say, no, you're not doing this to me, right? So it is perfect to do end domestic violence. And domestic violence is not only against women, it's against men as well, in a smaller proportion, but exists as well. Did we end domestic violence? No, it is much better. It is. At least I prefer my time than my grandmother's time. Because at least now I can speak up, we can fight against it, we can ask for changing laws. Because even the laws at my grandmother's time was to support that kind of behavior, right? Now we can fight, we can change laws, and laws has been changed, right? Proofs of support has been created. So many things has changed. It is perfect. It's not. And we're not going to be, because we're not perfect beings, right? We're still learning. We as an individual is still learning, we're still growing. But are we much better? Yes, we're much better. We are getting better. So that's what we have to look, because otherwise we really get caught in this negativity that's like, yes, this world is getting worse. Yes, this new generation, like I used to hear from my parents or my grandparents, this generation is lost. They all lost, right? That's horrible, right? Are they really horrible? No. And you have to remember that. And I think it's really funny when my grandparents compare my parents' generation, my parents' generation from my generation, because I'm thinking, wow, you raised the next generation. And my parents raised me. So if my generation is that bad, then isn't that your fault? Just throwing that there, right? Because if you're accusing the following generations that you helped to raise, and we all help to raise, doesn't matter if you have kids or not, but as a society, we help to raise the next generation. So if they're really that bad, then we did a bad job, right? So, and the truth is, and generations are not perfect because we're not perfect, but they're getting better. And I think we all can learn from each other. There's a lot of things that the new generations that are coming out of and now that's amazing that we can learn from them. But they also can learn a little bit from the wisdom of the elders, right? We need to learn to communicate and learn from each other, instead of either looking to the kids and saying, oh, you guys lost, or the kids look to the elders like, oh, just old people, I don't care, you know nothing, like you old news, right? We need to start to communicate and learn from each other, because that's what it is. Each generation can teach a little bit to each other, right? And Kardec asks, okay, but then what's limiting this? What's the main reason that limits this moral progress? And they say it's pride and selfishness, right? And they say, and the Spirit says, and we're referring to the moral progress, because intellectual, that's happening. Like we never had a problem holding our intellectual development. It says, but morally, what really holds us is pride and selfishness that leads to greedy, vanity, this desire to conquer, to have more, to, superiority, this nationalism that because there's one thing being patriot, the other thing is to have this nationalism that I'm superior because I'm from this country, or because my race, or because of this. This all comes from selfishness and from pride, right? And then Kardec kind of says, okay, but the fact that we grow intellectually, aren't we slowly creating all these needs? Because it is, materialistically talking, because of the progress of technology. Now, the needs that we have these days are being like, now we have to have a cell phone. I remember, like, when I was a teenager, we had no cell phones, and we all survived. But these days, and it's true, like, if you take my cell phone now, these days, like, where do I go? Like, my bank cards in it, like, everything's here, my email, like, so it became a necessity to have it these days. Yes, it is a necessity to have a cell phone. So he says, because we grew up intellectually, didn't we create all these needs, this need? So it's almost like what Kardec wants to say is, because we grew up so much intellectually, isn't that helping for us to actually do not grow morally? Because we're creating all these materialist needs and everything. And he says that at first sight, it looks like that's what it's doing, but it's not, he says. So it says, at first sight, it looks that intellectual progress intensifies pride and selfishness, but it also incites persons to pursue research that enlightens the spirit. And it is true, because we do have it, because we have access to knowledge, we have access to education. 200, 300 years ago, how many people really had access to education? Very little, right? Now we all have access to information. Now we have access to read. We all now have, we can now think, and we can have a more like a rational thinking now. So even inside of religions, and spirituality, we can now think in a more rational way, which is what Spiritism really pushes us, right? Kardec also says, don't believe what's in the book just because I wrote what the Spirits brought to me. Study, read it. Does it make sense? Does it matches with the laws of love and charity that Jesus brought to us? He said, if you think it doesn't match, then don't follow me. But we need to be more rational. So having this intellectual and all this growth, and because we're now using a lot of this technology to wrongdoings, to do bad things, this is actually now, it's allowing us to look and say, but that's wrong. I don't like it. I don't think this technology should be used for that. I don't think the internet should be used for child pornography. We need to stop it. It should not be used for bullying. It needs to stop it. But we wouldn't be able to analyze any of those things if we hadn't grown intellectually as well, if we hadn't educated ourselves. So he says, yes, at first sight, it seems that because we increase so much in technology, in intelligence, intellectually, that we kind of, this is actually what's hindering our morality, but it's not. He says, if you really do a more profound analysis, it's actually going to help us to eventually catch up and have both together, right? And the thing is also that we're always trying to find an excuse for us, because I have heard this also before. See, internet is the evil. That's the problem. But anybody have seen your computer, like if you buy a computer and you sit in there and the computer on its own start to bully people on the internet? I never saw it. You usually has to have someone in front of the computer, a human being with bad intentions, using that technology to do it. So the problem is not the technology, because every single piece of technology that we have these days, every single discovering in research and in science, it can be doing so much good. And all knowledge that we have these days comes from God. It's Him allowing us to discover nature, to discover how the world exists, how the universe moves. He's allowing us to, and He wants us to know, and He wants us to grow, right? So the problem is not the knowledge, it's not science, it's what we're doing with it, right? And the more you used to do the bad things, the more it's going to hurt. And one day we're going to come back and say, okay, now it's hurting too much. And that's what we're doing right now. We're coming back and saying, no, it's hurting too much. And it's, if anybody read the book 2,000 years ago, when Emmanuel, by the time was Publius Lentus, the Roman senator, he's there with Jesus, like Jesus incarnate at that time. He's talking to Jesus, and Jesus says, Publius, you can follow me right now by love, or you can follow me in 1,000 years by pain. And if you read the book, he chose the pain. And it's okay, because today is Emmanuel, who helped us to bring so many amazing books, an evolved spirit who helped us to bring so many books through Chico Xavier, right? But he chose by pain, right? And that's a little bit what we're doing. We choose the pain. It's going to hurt. And then say, it's hurting. I don't like it. I don't want to change. And it's okay, because the laws of progress. And we're going to progress regardless which path we choose. If I want to choose the path of, the love, or if I choose the path of pain, eventually it's that pain is what's going to make us to reroute and go to the right path. I don't want to pain anymore, right? And in fact, even for us as human beings, pain is not a bad thing. We think pain is a bad thing. It's not. Pain is actually what tells to your body that there's something wrong. with you. Can you imagine if you fall, break a leg, and there's no pain? And you try to walk on that leg that's broken now? The damage would be much worse than if you actually feel the pain. It's like, oh, I think something's wrong. Let me just limp and go to the ER, take an x-ray. It's like, oh yeah, there is pain. And then you cast, and then you preserve. So pain is actually just something, and can be physical or moral. It's just to tell us something's wrong here. Something needs to be changed, or something needs to be taken care. That's what it is, pain, right? But we see as something negative. No, pain sometimes is good. Now, it's good in a sense of letting us know there's something wrong. Don't attach to pain, because then it's not good, okay? Because then self-flagellation, that's another thing happened. And like a long time ago, right? And the in the medieval times, the self-flagellation, because pain must purify you, right? Like, no, don't self-inflict pain. That's different. That's a pain that it's not good, okay? I'm just talking about the natural pain that comes from the consequence of things that I haven't done. It's just a warning to say, go back, because that's not the right path, right? And our conscience is very good at telling us when it's time to go back because we're not on the right path. Okay. And then Kardec talks a little bit about human laws and natural laws. And one of the first questions that he asks is, could society be governed just by the natural laws, which means the divine laws, without having to have our human laws or the civil laws, right? And the answer is, yeah, it could. It could, but if humans understood them well enough, if they were to actually to practice them, such laws would be sufficient. Society, however, has its requirements and needs special laws. Very easy to understand that what he's saying. He says, yeah, if you really understood the divine laws, which Jesus pretty much combining to love God above all and love one another as you love yourself. Don't do to others what you don't like. If you really understood that, and if you really practice that at 100%, yes, why you need civil laws? You go to the grocery shopping and there is the parking spots available to disabled people, right? It's nah. And how many of us actually just don't park in there because there's a fine attached to it? Because it's just 5 minutes. I just need 5 minutes inside the grocery shop, and that's the only spot available. Some of us don't even care for the law and parking anyways, which is extremely disrespectful. But we don't like when we are disrespected, right? But how many of us actually don't do that just because there is a fine attached to it? Because if he didn't have the fine attached to it, I probably for 10, 15 minutes, I would park in there, right? So unfortunately, we do need civil laws. Yes, if there was a law that says that I crossed the red light, I get a fine. Probably not in a rush today. I'm late for work. I'm going to just cross this red light right now. But there's a fine attached to it, so I won't do it, right? And that's just simple things on a daily basis. How many things we don't do it just because there's a law that tells us to do? Who pay your taxes if you're not? There's no law that tells you to pay your taxes. Who many of us say, no, you're not? I actually know. I know that I'm not obligated to pay my tax, but I'm going to pay because I know this reverts to the good of my whole society, because that's how we create schools, hospitals, infrastructure in the cities. How many of us really would pay taxes willingly? Because I know that's the better of the good. I don't think I would. I have to think twice about that. I don't know. I would pay, or pay half what I pay. Maybe I wouldn't pay as much, right? So we do need it. We do need it because we didn't completely understood the divine laws. We don't quite practice them yet, right? So we do, as a society, we do. But even even the civil laws, if you look from time of Moses, an eye for an eye. So if you kill me, I can kill you. If you steal from me, I can steal from you. If you stole from me, I can steal from you. Like, all those things change. Like, it's not like that anymore, right? So if you compare our human laws, they are changing. Now we're fighting for more equality now in our laws, right? We're fighting for any laws or any behaviors that we consider racist. We wanted to stop them. So over time, we change the laws. Women's rights has changed. No, laws have been changed. All right. We don't have buses anymore where Black people have to sit at the back. They will not be accepted. It was a law at the time, a law that if you're Black, especially, I don't know, I don't think we have had this, someone correct me, I don't think we have this law kind of here in Canada, but in states they had it. In states they had laws that if you're Black, you had to sit at the back of the bus. Until we had a brave woman who said, I'm not sitting at the back. And this has to be changed, right? And so that's what we're doing these days. But that's why human laws is constantly changing and changing for better. Every single of them change for better. No, we do have still a lot of laws there that supports and protects big corporations do whatever they want and don't protect us. Yes, we do. But we have a lot of other laws that have been changed for the better of the whole community. And that's why they're constantly changing, because they're perfect. Because the day that we really understand what is love one another, what is the fraternal love that Jesus taught us, then it's not even that we're not going to need civil laws, it's just they're going to match the divine laws. I don't need to have a law to tell me that it's not nice to kill someone. I don't need to, I don't need a law to tell me that I should leave this parking spot to people with disabilities or the pregnant, some of them have for pregnant ladies. Like, I don't, because I wouldn't do that to someone. This is not cool. I don't feel good doing it. I don't need a law to tell me that's wrong. I, as an individual, think that's wrong, so I don't do it because I don't like that to be done to me. So the day that we understand that, then our civil laws is going to match the divine laws. So it's not that we not going to need civil laws, it's just going to match, it's going to be one law. But right now, we need both, right? And that's what he sings here to Kardec. He sings, yes, at the level of more evolution that we are, yes, we do need both. Because otherwise, we'd be living in a chaos of society, right? If you didn't have the civil laws. And that's what he says. He says, it's what causes this instability on the civil laws, on the human laws. He says that's not what it is. Because when they start back in there, in the barbarian times, it was always the strongest ones creating. And they created to their own benefits. Because if I'm in power, I'm going to create laws that benefit me, right? Like in the Roman Empire, did you see them making laws that would benefit the other cultures around them? No, one of the ones that benefited my culture, like the Roman Empire, and if anything, also benefits the hierarchy inside of the Roman society. That's what it is about, right? To still have those kind of laws today, yeah, much less, because these days now we can, because these days if I go there and say, I'm against you, they're going to put in a coliseum and make a lion eat me, right? So a little bit quite different today, right? But we still need the human laws, right? And that's why human laws always change, but the divine laws are immutable. In all times, the divine laws didn't change. When Moses brought the 10 Commandments with the divine laws, and Jesus came centuries later, he says, I didn't come to change the law. I came to fulfill them. And he was talking about the divine laws. And over 2,000 years later, the divine laws is still the same. Let's love one another as brothers and sisters. That's the only thing that he asked for, right? That's why in Spiritism, we don't say without Spiritism, there's no salvation. What Spiritism brings is without charity, there's no salvation. If you're not fraternal, if you're not charitable to each other, then yes, it's gonna pain. The pain's gonna keep coming because we are creating this pain by not treating each other with the love and care that we should treat, which is the way that we would like to be treated, right? When you really understand this concept, when you let it go, our selfishness and our pride more and more slowly, because it is a slow process, then it's going to keep hurting. And you have to remember that we cannot slow the process. We cannot stop the process as a society. We cannot stop this progress. We can slow but not stop. But as an individual, Teresa here, each one of us as an individual, we also cannot regress, but we can be stationary. I can come here on a whole incarnation and lose this whole incarnation. We do not regress, because that's a question that Kardec even does to this. Okay, but some individuals that like they come in an incarnation and they do so much wrongdoing, don't they add this all to the piles of debts now they have before the divine laws? And isn't that a regression? Because no, it's not regression. And I never understood this until I saw a lecture and someone explained this in a very in an easy way. It's like, oh, now I get it. So it says, imagine if you're a ball of energy, and every time you do something good, it grows a little bit. And it says that, but then at the same time, all every time that you do something wrong, the ball doesn't shrink. What it does is adds a layer around this ball, and another layer, and another layer, and another layer. So then eventually, for me to keep growing again, I'm going to have to break those layers. I'm going to have to fix those layers to now keep expanding again. But the ball doesn't shrink, like the ball of energy doesn't shrink. So we do not regress. Any good that we have learned, any moral development we had, any intellectual, it is with us, but we can be stationary. And Emmanuel says that in one of his passages in the Living Spring collection, that he says that a lot of us live through the doors of discarnation exactly morally, exactly in the same way that we came through the doors of reincarnation. We come here and waste a whole incarnation, and this waste is very loose because nothing is wasted, because again, it is going to cause so much pain that's more going to wake us up and say, got it. I don't want to go on that path anymore. Now I want to go in a little bit path. So on my next reincarnation, I want to try to do a little bit better. So nothing is ever lost. And that's and the Spirit says to Kardec, and that's how a lot of good come out of the bad. Because God in his mercy allow us to learn with all the bad things that happens around us, all the bad things that we create, so we can become better person. So from the bad, something good always ends up coming out of it. So how can Spiritism contribute with this progress? So one of the things that it can do is by destroying this materialism. And how? By bringing us the concept of reincarnation, this concept that life doesn't end here. This is just a temporary life. This is actually our permanent life. This is immortal spirits. This is just like trips that we do here to this body for a short time of period, so we can learn from each other, we can create our connections, we can fix things from the past that we have to correct now. But we just don't have this life. This is not just one life where I have to acquire everything, I need to reach, I have to do, and gives us the concept that, you know what, when you die, everything stays behind. And yes, maybe in this incarnation, maybe rich as can be in terms of material stuff, next one, you may be born on a poor family. So nothing belongs to us. Everything that's material is just a land. It's landed to us while we're here, including this body. Not even this goes with us. It rottens and goes down. And if you cremate, it goes even faster. But, so what it's ours, it's what's inside of us, is our sentiments or connections of love that go with us no matter where we go. It's all the moral stuff, the intellectual, everything. That's what it's ours. It's in here. It's us as a spirit. That will go with us. That belongs to us. And the Spiritism brings the concept. So help us to have a better, and there's nothing wrong, but like we all need clothes, we all need a shelter, we all need a car, we all need our cell phones. And it's okay. If it's okay for me to have my company and make my company grow and I make more and more money, why not? You're giving job to people. But how do I treat my employees? Am I just worried about my profits and I don't care for my employees? That's the problem. But if I'm treating my employees well and I'm creating jobs and I'm doing it in an honest way, and on top of that, I'm growing my wealth, no problem. It's how the value that we do, or I'm just living to acquire things and I forget my connections as a family, my connection with friends, my society, what I'm doing for the others around us. That's the problem. So Spiritism bring this concept and help us to become a little bit less materialist, right? And Spiritism also, by the reincarnation, brings it breaks, it destroys all the prejudice of sect, caste, color, because listen, we all the same. Yes, maybe in this life I'm white. I might grow next one. I may be a black man or an Asian woman. Like, It's a body. We all here have reincarnated in different cultures in the past. They have been man, woman in different reincarnations. So, have you seen that one that they take an X-ray of people different, like different colors, and they show the X-rays the same? Like when you see the picture, it says all the same. We all the same. We all the same spirits. There's only one family in this planet. It's humanity. It's one family. We all equal. And spirits bring this to us. We, as a spirits, we're not any better than anybody else. We're not any better than any other religion. We all sons of the same God, and we all here to love one another and to help to grow as a society intellectually and morally. That's what we're here for. So let's go now back to our initial question, our initial read. So you guys know who wrote them? Or actually didn't write anything, who said that phrase, children, they have the bad manners, they don't respect the elders, they're tyrants. There's Socrates. 500 years before Jesus, or 470 years, almost 500 years before Jesus. Socrates criticizing the youth of his time. So if Socrates was right, and we are not progressing, and Socrates was right, which means then his generation, and to get to my grandparents and my parents, who has been criticized the next generations, honestly, we're back in the caves by now. 2,500 years later, will not be in a better society. Would be worse than the barbarian things that were done 2,000 years ago. The Colosseum is to be working until this day, but doing worse stuff than just putting a bunch of people there and using lions to kill people or dragging them with the horses. Because if Socrates 2,500 years ago was right, would be much worse these days. I don't even know what kind of a world we're going to be living today. So thank God, the law of progress is a law, and we're actually getting better as a society. So thank God, Socrates was wrong. My grandparents are wrong. My parents are wrong. My generation is wrong, because the truth is, each generation is better. Are they perfect? Absolutely not. We are imperfect beings. How are we going to create a perfect generation? But are they getting better? Yes, they're getting better. Look at our society. When I was a child, I was a teenager, about my 15, 16, 18 years old, and then we're talking about over 30 years ago. I don't remember any of my colleagues, people on my age at the time, teenagers. I don't remember any of them involved in non-profit organizations. I don't remember any of them fighting for inequality. I don't remember. That's okay. At the time also, we didn't have that access of so much information as we have today, right? But even like around, and when I was 8, 9 years old, I was playing with my dolls and with my brother, like running around. I didn't know that there's kids like hunger and around the world. Now I saw a few years ago, this kid here in Canada, 8 years old, doing campaigns. He actually, the parents supported, and he got to the point that grew so much doing campaigns to raise money for water, to give water to kids in Africa. My generation, they didn't even know what's happening in Africa at the age of 8 or 9. Now these kids are having access to this information, saying, this is wrong. I have water in my house. Why those kids don't have? They need to have it as well. They are fighting for a better world. That was almost inexistent in my generation. We have great examples in history. Malala at the age of 15, a girl in north of Pakistan, alone, fighting against the Taliban for the girls to have the right to go to school at the age of 15. And we know all what happened. They tried to kill her. She survived. And until this day, at the age of 16 or 17, she got a Nobel Prize for her work. And she's still fighting for the rights of the girls in the north of Pakistan to have the right to go to school. Right? We have Greta Thunberg, who at the age of 15 went to just a little plague in front of the parliament in Sweden and say, we need to act now for our environment. Now, it's not promises for in 30, 40 years, it's now. The destruction is right now. And the parents didn't support her at all. They didn't prohibit her, but they said, we don't support you. You should go to school. And she goes, no, this is more important. And look at the movement that she created around the world, right? And in fact, she started at 8 years old. So 8 years old, she started to ask the parents to change all the habits inside of the home to diminish the carbon print inside of the home. That's how she started. She made the family change habits inside at 8 years old. So it's something else. And she was shocked that, see, look at what's happening around the world. Nobody's doing anything to change it. Like, nobody's going to speak up. Like, well, then I'm going to go. And she didn't care. It's like, I'm 15, like I'm just a single girl sitting there with a plaque in front of the parliament. She goes, I'm going. That's the right thing to do. And she did it. And now has a whole world movement, Agasa, bringing, awareness. Fix the problem, not yet. But that's because we're a long way to go, but that's the beginning. Kids are speaking up in a way that my generation, they didn't speak up. Right? Kids this day don't even, my generation was a generation that you had to, you get to grow up and you study and you get your diploma and then you get a house, you get a car, and the better car, the better, because it gives you status, best car that you have. A lot of kids in this generation, they don't even care for cars anymore. They don't want a car. They want a public transportation because it's better for the environment. They want to ride their bikes because now they don't even care cars are something that gives me status, right? They don't. They're like, so the mentality is changing. The new generations are much better. But the truth is, again, we all can learn from each other. Each generation has something. Yes, there's things on my generation that's a little bit better than us. Yes, so we all can learn from each other. So instead of us saying, they're lost, the world's horrible, look at these young people, let's learn with them. There's lots that we can learn from them. And there's lots that they can learn from the old generations. Because also, if you don't look to our elders, if you don't look to the people that came before us, who went through it already, and don't try to learn anything from them, then all the knowledge, all the good things will never be passed from generation to generation. How are we going to progress? We need each other. Each generation needs each other to help. And you have to remember, then eventually all here are going to discarnate. And down the road, a few generations down the road, who's coming back? Us. Are we going to be worse than we are right now? Because the generations are getting worse, then we're saying that we are worse. We're saying that we are worse now than we were in previous reincarnations. I like to believe that I'm at least a touch better, right? And then eventually when I come back, I don't know how many decades, because, I still have to disconnect first and not in a rush. But eventually I'm going to come back, and I'm hoping to come back a little bit better. And I'm pretty sure I'll come back to a generation much better, right? So yes, we are progressing, and the generations are better each time, better and better, right? And so that's what I want to bring a little bit for us today. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Teresa. It was such an inspiring lecture. So I guess we have a couple minutes. If anybody has any
Questions or comments?
Through the internet as well. Something is there. No? Yeah. So thank you very much, Teresa.
No.
Okay.
I can do the
Do you want to do the final?
Yeah.
Okay.
So help us now today with our final prayer. Okay. So let us all now close our eyes. And let's keep connected with this good energy that has been falling over all of us all through this lecture. Bring us the balance, the good fluids that we all need to bring harmony to our bodies and our spirit. Let's thank God, our Father, Jesus, our Master, and our benefactors for the opportunity of being here one more Sunday together to learn for all these lessons that the Spirit brought to us through Kardec. May this light be with us, shine in our way all through this week, and that we may share this love, that surround us here right now, with all of those that are around us, our family, friends, co-workers, and even the strangers on the street. Thank you, God. Thank you for blessing us all, and so be it. So thank you everyone for being here today. It's fantastic seeing our house getting full again. This is really beautiful. Just reminding, of course, we have our lectures on Sundays at 11 o'clock, but also we have our group study on Wednesdays. It starts at 7 o'clock, and it's on the internet or it's presential. I'm here. So it's 7 to 8:30, and what we do is study the gospel according to the Spiritism and the Spirit's book. So we do 45 minutes each. And it is just a study, and basically we read a little bit and then we discuss together and learn from each other a little bit of the lessons that Kardec brought to us, that the Spirit brought to us through Kardec. Okay? So it's open to anybody who would like to participate in this study. And and have everybody a blessed Sunday and a blessed week as well. Okay.
Guys, just a second. Next weekend.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Thank you. So next weekend, July 10th, there's no lecture because we're going to do our AGM, our general meeting. As a nonprofit, we have to do every year. And also because we just reopened the house, more than ever, we need this meeting to bring together, see what's the new projects for, with this reopening. And we invite everybody to be part of it. So everybody can come and can give your opinions, or, that's the moment where you get our new volunteers to see, because that's the moment we talk about, okay, this is what the things that the house needs, who can volunteer. So please feel free to come and participate. It's going to be from 10 to 12 o'clock. So it's going to do a couple of hours of this meeting. So it is open to the public, and we actually would really love to have all of you here to participate on this meeting with us. Okay. So just remember that there's no lecture, and it's a little bit earlier, so it's 10 to 12. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Denise. Yeah, forgot.